I'm with Katya Popova. Is that how it's pronounced?
Popova.
And she's an artist living in Somerville. And we're going to talk about her work and her life here on this show. So, what is your Somerville connection? Could you just tell us briefly about that?
Well, I was moving around, looking for the neighborhood to settle in. And I think right about 2008, I think I started renting in Somerville. And, I was always attracted to sort of the vibrancy of the community. I got involved with in kind of a art collective on Sullivan Square, a glitch. Well, they called Glitch Night, but they're a bunch of they're different artists who live in the building with different interests in different mediums. But this particular group was interested in electronic music and VJing. So I was, there's a really cool artist who founded this community, Peter Zebler. He is from Belarus originally, and we speak Russian, of course, and we connected with him, and we collaborated on some projects. I'm a very good illustrator and a person who can draw very well, and I'm also, by sort of the history of my education and practice, places me between the mediums. I started as a painter and a traditional artist, and when I went to Rhode School of Design, I was curious about graphic design, and I was all of a sudden producing things on the computer. So it sort of made me kind of I don't know, I guess interesting to this community, because I was interested in both mediums. And so I sort of I created things within the parameters and context of their happenings. They did a lot at that time. At the same time, so Somerville was just kind of a space where it felt that I felt interested to express myself as an artist. It felt like some part of me is connected to that kind of strange mix of community between working class and students and this Burning Man artists and people, the techno primitives, and then the other, like a craftsman. It felt like a very vibrant sort of place.
Do you
Including
think
all
it? Do you
this.
think it? Do you think it still is with all the gentrification and all that? I mean, are you still in Somerville?
No,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's interesting that you asked. I feel still like a Somerville person because I still have a studio in Vernon Street Studios, but it's been this pandemic year kind of pushed us outside of the city, because we were renting with other people, and we didn't feel comfortable to keep sharing the space with my husband. So we ended up starting to rent Airbnbs in the forests, in New Hampshire forests and Vermont forests. We don't own any property, so we started traveling. All the work which I was supposed to do, my teaching gigs or other type of gigs, everything became online gigs.
Yeah.
So that allowed for moving around. So we're still, in spite of all this pandemic being kind of less, and we're still not back in Somerville, because the prices, surprisingly, everyone was talking how everything is going to come down and that whole bubble and everything, but nothing changed. So we're still kind of, not
in limbo, right?
In limbo. Yeah. In the meantime, I still have that studio, and now it became a collection of my bigger artwork, which I've been doing through this past summer too. And
in fact, your artwork is connected with audio as well, right?
Yeah, that's another thing which happened to me kind of over time. I think I was always interested in music and in sound, but you know, when I met all these musicians around New England Conservatory, and I started hanging out with them, and I started doing things with them. You know, first were shadow performances, which would create in this basement lounge founded by one of the students. It was called, the house was called The Weld. And that was not Somerville, it was, they lived in JP. And we did a lot of experiments. You know, I also taught at the same time some children groups, you know, and I would take one of the musicians with me, Billy McShane. He's a really talented wind player. And he would work, and we would work for 2 hours, would come with all the materials, would work for 2 hours. He would work on music with the group of kids who was interested. And we didn't speak Russian, and the group was Russian kids. But in the meantime, Billy was able to just communicate with them through sounds. And then I was working on puppets and stories and breaking the people by interests. And in 2 hours, we would basically perform the whole thing to their parents. And that was a funny, very funny gig. But in general, yes, you know, I sort of through these experiments and experiences, and then through working with other artists like Elliot Cardinal, whom I've met also at the conservatory. He is a jazz piano player and a poet, but he was very interested in trying other things. So even during pandemic time, I involved him in toy theater, which Great Small Works. John Bell and Trudy were organizing this fantastic toy theater performances through Zoom, because you know toy theater is very tiny. And when you have Zoom stage, all of a sudden it all makes sense because you see things in such huge size. So that also happened, the puppetry, and kind of moving towards, in general, performative genres. Mm-hmm. And my NAC, sort of New England Conservatory of Music appointment, which happened in 2015, I think. And before that, I was already, you know, I went out of my way to join like an acting theater summer program in outside of Moscow, in Kaluga. And there's a kind of Stanislavski sort of inspired camp, which lasts like residency. You can call it residency, like it's for an hour, for like a month and a half. You're there creating things with different directors, and then you perform in Moscow. And my group was street theater, and it was puppets.
What theater?
A street theater.
Street theater. Yeah.
Yes, it was a really great director who, at that point, he worked in Russia, but he lived in Czechia, Czechoslovakia, the Soviet time Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, or now Czechoslovakia, I guess. Yes, and he he's like Cherkessia inspired folk tales, and we ended up working with his puppets mostly. But it was an experience, because I think the most different thing about performance art is working with time. You know, you are working with time, and whatever happens in time, in this moment in time, it happens. Whatever doesn't, you know, it happens maybe next time, or it happens differently. And that's what attracts me to this medium, because it's so ephemeral, it's so fleeting, and it's so immediate. But in the meantime, the preparation for that moment can take months.
Let me ask you a question. In Somerville, I mean, I just interviewed Alexandra Rosenman, who you say you know. And, yeah. Is there and she's from Moscow originally, like yourself. Is there like a community of Russian artists around here that you're aware of?
You know, we kind of singled out a little bit, like, you know, we're not really, I don't find us as a community. My parents' generation, it's a bit different. Like there's like I know several Russian hubs of their generation, people getting together, drinking, you know, sharing ideas. I was just thinking about this, in fact, because I was listening, there's this really interesting kind of like new media, cultural program, radio program, like podcasts organized in Russia, and I can see how many generations of poets and artists were collaborating and existing next to each other, you know, and
But here
I
you're
didn't.
spread out. Yeah, you're spread out, right?
I think it's less. Yeah, I didn't find. I mean, I definitely have really great friends, artists from Somerville, but they're not necessarily Russian. I
Okay.
became very good friends with Misha and Caitlin. They were a couple who lived in Somerville, right next to me, next to Medford Street, off Pearl Street. And but now they moved to Lowell, so now they're part of the
Yeah, they
Lowell
probably
community.
can't afford to live in Somerville. Yeah.
Well, they actually they decided to have a child, yeah, and everything had to change in their lifestyle. Yeah, it's very true.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
you grew up on, after you came from Russia, you grew up on the North Shore, if I'm not from the North Shore?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, basically, I came and I spent a year learning English, and I didn't have a right to work, and my
But
parents,
but
yeah.
but you were influenced by the sea, right? The oceans.
Well, yeah, that definitely helped me a lot because, you know, when you come and you're like 17, 18, and you're in between school and college, and you don't know how to speak the language, and all of your friends stayed in
Hmm.
Moscow, you know,
Hmm.
and my parents were also not around. They came 1 year later. I think it was a very difficult time for me. And I think the fact that I was into landscape painting in general, coming from Russian background of painting landscapes from like age 12, I don't know, as assignments for my art school, you know, I really was drawn to this whole thing with the ocean and stones and you know, the not Morton Feldman, Edward Hopper's kind of sensibilities with color and stillness of things and kind of beauty of that stillness in architecture. You know, I was going to Marblehead a lot, you know, and it's I definitely was connecting to it through drawing and painting.
Now, I was going to ask you, what are you currently working on? What is your current sort of sensibility? Um,
Uh, well, it's a very actually hard question you're asking.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Uh, no, but it's interesting because I became that multimedia person, which is almost like popular right now. Every other artist is multimedia artist, and it's hard for us, I guess, not to double in all kind. Like I really respect Alexandra, for example, for keeping very true to her medium and not kind of spreading herself over this other things. But I'm working right now at the moment. I'm working with an artist from Minneapolis who was before in New York, and him and I we met at Bread and Puppet Theater this past June while working on a production called Persians. It was a big production recreating kind of like this Greek tragedy, but in this bread and puppet Peter Schumann style. And we decided to collaborate again, and he came up with the idea, which I became very fond of. So I invited him to work with my class at Newman Conservatory to bring it to life together. Because of COVID, unfortunately, he is in Minneapolis, and we're doing it as a half pre-recorded, well, pre-recorded sound, and then visual is going to be half made by me, half going to be made by the class, or actually most of it is made by the class through Zoom. So we're playing with Zoom grids and limitations of Zoom in order to create this narrative and these visuals, which is kind of half abstract, but it's called Immolated Scene, and it is about kind of absurdity of creating weapons of mass destruction and all this the kind of the chorus, the music chorus is based on um, you know, kind of all these cities where mass shootings happened during the 2020, which was pandemic year. And it's a little bit, it's kind of heavy, but in the meantime it's very abstract and beautiful because it's also based on Wagner's Ring. And
The opera, the ring cycle, the
right, the
opera.
ring cycle. Yes, yes, and it has the characters like Nibelung, and but Damien kind of took the moment of Burning Sky as his starting point, and then the Nibelungen, they're not, they all of a sudden are questioning like what is this weapons we're making, and then there's this idea that how to stop all this destruction is maybe by creating a moral compass. So the answer is to create a moral compass, which is kind of a beautiful, like idealistic vision.
Do you think that art should generally have a moral, create a moral compass?
I'm not, I'm of generation of, coming from former Soviet Union who don't like propaganda, any kind of, even bread and puppet is its own thing, but I'm drawn to bread and puppet for all kinds of other reasons, not only because it's a political theater. So I am not as I don't think that. I think in a way art is trying to point at something true. It's trying to reveal something, and that something is part of life. It's part of how our life is, and what is true in that life. And I think it's if it's a genuine piece of art, it would do it in its own way. But I don't think I wouldn't say straightforward, and I wouldn't call it moral compass, because even the word moral means all these different things,
and it could be restrictive, right?
It could be very restrictive, yeah. But in this context where Damien is with this ring cycle and it made me laugh, because it's such a funny idea that you can just create that moral compass, and all of a sudden all these agencies, big agencies, deciding our international relations and what to do and what to build and not to build, all of a sudden have this kind of one reference point, which can lead them to make that decision. Not political control, not.
But
not
there was
power.
great, I mean, under Stalin there was propaganda art and all that. I mean, I imagine that.
Right, and the thing is, when I teach kids right now, I came today from Lowell, UMass Lowell, and I'm doing a lot of graphic design with them because it's a digital foundation course for freshmen. And I'm bringing in my favorite people like, Rodchenko and, all this 1920s Russian constructivism is something which still really inspires me. And I go there, and Lisitsky, with this beautiful naums and all this floating shapes and rectangles, and Kandinsky, of course. I realized that this art is some of it is propaganda art, some of it is propaganda. Stepanova is doing this poster with all these hands, trying to vote.
But it can still be good art, right? I mean, even though it's propaganda.
But it was very good art, and the art was good because these people at this point in time, it's before Mayakovsky killed himself, before people really started towards 30s, it became more obvious that what is happening, and a lot of people had already very good intuition about the where they stand in this space, and that was not acceptable. So people like Mayakovsky, the futurist poet, big guy, beautiful, and he killed himself. I think in general, I don't think about that side of things when I'm showing them this art. We're just talking about the talented choices people did. The talented choices, the ideas, and how this idea can sort of move and charge this visual decisions. Okay. Because this connection there was so unique, I think, for the history of graphic art and painting.
So I was going to ask you, do you have a gallery showing or a performance coming up that you'd like to talk about?
Well, the immolated scene, which I just talked about, which is a collaboration between me and Damien Norfleet. I can put his name here if you're interested.
Sure.
He has a very good website, Damien Norfleet. And actually, well, I did create a page which I also could share with you, which is going to host a video, the final video of what we are doing, and also this page can inform you in terms of what the piece is about, and you can see some image. But the performance is tomorrow, so I am definitely all about this right now, just because I'm very interested in what I'm very invested in this piece.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on Off the Shelf for the Somerville Times, and hope to see your work around.
Yeah,